Hello and welcome. I just wanted to come and say a few words before the actual tutorial video started. So the aim of this project, or this video I should say, is to be a one-stop shop for basically 90% of the features that most people would use in iNaturalist. This includes just the very basics like uploading an observation, all the way to more advanced topics like how to use the data in actual research projects. Now, of course, I won't be able to go over everything in this video, and it is quite long-winded at some points, so I have included timestamps in the description below. Feel free to rewatch things as many times as you need, or to skip ahead to a part that's more relevant to you. So I just want to come on and say thank you for joining, and I hope that you find this video informative and helpful.
All right, hello and welcome everyone. So a few weeks ago, I had the idea to make this video, seeing that at the time of posting, there are currently no comprehensive tutorials about the web browser version of iNaturalist. So my hope with this video is to provide some guidance on how to use this powerful platform for citizen science from both a beginner and more advanced user standpoint. In this video, we will cover several different topics, including both setting up an online account for the first time, as I will show you in a second here, how to upload your first observation, and how to explore local species in your area. Once we've covered the basics, we will work our way to cover more in-depth topics such as creating your own collection of projects or even downloading CSV files. Alright, so with that out of the way, I think it most appropriate that we begin with a brief introduction of what iNaturalist even is. So for those of you who are familiar with the platform, feel free to skip about 30 seconds ahead, as this probably won't be any new information to you. But if this is your first time, iNaturalist is a citizen science platform that allows users from across the globe to share their findings on all life forms. This includes rare species, which can provide vital information to conservationists and scientists who are trying to save them from extinction. It also provides vital information about more common day-to-day species, like their extent of occurrence, just a fancy way of saying their home range. So where are they located, and how is this changing as climate change occurs? Where are they moving to? What time of the year? All this important data is being collected on iNaturalist constantly by people across the globe like you and I. So while you may not be a scientist yourself, the whole point of iNaturalist is that it's for everyone to learn, share, and enjoy nature. So whether you're writing a thesis on a specific type of ground beetle and need a guide for how to use this software, or you're simply a curious mind who wants to document plants in your neighborhood, you're in the right place and the right tutorial for that. Okay, without any further ado, we're going to go through the process step by step of how to set up an account for the first time. Okay, so I'll draw your attention to the sign up tab here. Now you may have noticed in the background it kind of pans through different images. We're just going to ignore that for now and click the sign up button. There is of course the option to explore without an account, but for the purposes of today's video, we're going to go through the more comprehensive version, which requires you to have an account when you're setting it up. So we're going to click on the sign up button and it will take us to this page. So in order to have a fully registered iNaturalist account, you need to have a valid email address to create a username, which will then take you to your homepage at the start. So I'm just using a dummy email account this time, but go ahead and enter your own information here. Okay. Right. And now sometimes, yeah, you might have the same username as someone else, so it might take you a minute to find a new one. Okay. Alright, so once we've got our information inputted, we have our password, our email, and our account. Go ahead and check this box. You're going to select all of these that apply to you. Some you need to actually create an account, but others you don't. So I'm going to go ahead and create an account. So I'm saying yes, license my photos so scientists can use your data. This is what everyone should do. As long as you're not a photographer who's making money off your photos, it's best to allow other people to be able to use this as part of their research, as that's kind of the whole point of iNaturalist as a citizen science platform. And yes, I consent to allow them to store and process certain kinds of information, and I agree to the terms of use and privacy. Whoops. Okay, I forgot to add my email address up here. Alrighty. Alright, so let's create an account. This may take a few seconds here. Awesome. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and save my information. So once you get into your account for the first time, you're going to get this green banner at the top to confirm your email address. So yeah, just go into your normal email browser, which I'll show you right here. Go in and click on the confirm email address and hit confirm. This will then take you back to your main homepage and give you this message saying that your account has been successfully confirmed. All right, perfect. So now we are into iNaturalist, the actual full program for your web browser. So there are a number of different reasons why you'd want to use the web browser version as opposed to the mobile version. There are a lot of tutorials that currently exist online, especially on YouTube for the mobile version, but there are less about the web browser. And this platform specifically is much more powerful. You have the ability to have much more granular control over the species you're seeing, as well as it's just a more comprehensive user experience, good for both beginners and advanced people alike. All right, so now that we're into our homepage, we're just going to kind of orient ourselves because there's a lot to look at first. And iNaturalist is a fairly intuitive platform. Most of the features and tabs are quite self-explanatory, but that doesn't mean that they're always completely obvious. So for most of you who are just coming into iNaturalist for the very first time, the kind of primary reason you're doing so is to upload an observation that you might have because you want to figure out either what kind of species it is or to, document it because it might be a rare species that someone's told you about. So the first thing you want to do in this scenario is to go to the Upload tab. So once we have an account, we can go ahead and select the Upload tab. Now there's a number of different ways you can upload observations and a number of different data types that are supported. So there's a number of guidelines online for iNaturalist about what types of data files are commonly used and when and where to use certain ones. But the two most common are sound files and, of course, just pictures. That's one thing about iNaturalist that is very good compared to some other citizen science platforms, is that it requires proof of the organism. Some platforms don't necessarily require that. So in terms of the quality of data you're getting from iNaturalist, it's very high due to this ability to verify that you're actually seeing or hearing the species that you say you're seeing or hearing. Okay, so that was a bit long-winded. We're just going to go through a basic example of an upload for you so you can follow along, uploading your own image and following the same process, or of course just watch how I do it and then do it yourself later. So in this scenario, I'm going to choose to upload a file directly from my file explorer, and I'm choosing to use a photo today. So we're going to click on the Choose Files, which will then pop up our file explorer. So I have a picture I want to upload today, so I'm going to select Pictures, scroll all the way to the bottom, and I have this lovely picture of a prothonotary warbler that I'm hoping to upload today. So once we select this picture, we're going to hit the Open, which will then bring it into this tab here. So now, there are several key components that you want to look out for when you're first uploading a photo, and probably the most important when you just get your file into iNaturalist is to make sure your metadata is correct. Now, what do I mean when I say that? Metadata is all the supplementary information that goes alongside your image. Like you can kind of see here, some of it's auto-filled, such as the date and time, but the location is also a very important factor when you're uploading things to iNaturalist. Now, the reason you want to do this first before you try and guess what species it is or input up here is that the algorithms, the artificial intelligence algorithms that iNaturalist uses are sometimes based on time of year and location. So having these filled in first is going to improve the model's ability to accurately identify your species. All right, so before I go ahead and actually input the location for this image, I want to make note that many devices, including most modern smartphones, will actually be able to do this for you. So if you go into the device settings, either on your Photos app or your Camera app, and toggle on the option to automatically save location, it means when you go ahead and upload a photo, this metadata will already be included and you can just skip this step. But for this specific instance, I took this photo using my main mirrorless camera, which doesn't have a built-in GPS, so I have to manually input location. Now, before I do so, I want to make a quick ethical note. Well, iNaturalist is very powerful at showing the distribution of many species. In the case of sensitive or rare species, I always recommend to obscure the location. So we're going to go ahead and show you that process right now. So I'm going to click on the location tab, which brings you to this map of the world. I'm then going to scroll into the approximate location where I made this observation. And the cool thing about iNaturalist is there's many different ways you can input location. You can put the exact lat or longitude coordinates in if you have that data on hand, as well as the accuracy in meters. But what we're going to do, since it was in Rondo Park, I'm just going to select the park as a whole. So the accuracy is going to be pretty low for this observation, but that's intentional. I've uploaded it on my main account, this observation already, so it doesn't need to be precise because I'm going to go ahead and delete it after this video. But for the purpose of this video, I'm going to go ahead and show you the most important geoprivacy tools. So like I mentioned, when you're uploading a rare species, which in this case, the prothonotary warbler is considered an at-risk species in Ontario, you want to make sure that you aren't accidentally giving away its location. Now, iNaturalist will natively do this based on your local legislation, and it's fairly good. Most of the time it gets it right and will automatically obscure the location of endangered plants and animals, but of course it's not perfect, and obviously you don't want to take that chance. So whenever I have a rare species that I know is rare, or maybe suspect is an uncommon species that I don't want someone to know about, I'm going to go ahead and select the obscure option. This essentially places the location point in a random 20 by 20 grid within that area so that that data still exists and can be accessed upon a special request. However, it is not directly open to the public, meaning it's impossible or very difficult for someone to find the exact location of that species. Now, if you have something that's on, your private property that you really don't want anyone to know about on the internet, you can of course select the private option, which won't show the data to anybody. All right, so for our purposes, I'm going to go ahead and update this observation, which will then take this location data and attach it to the previous file. All right, so now that we've dealt with the metadata and made sure that it's all up to date and correct, we can go ahead and add any notes that we want. I'm just going to add a brief note, which is an optional thing that you can do at a later point, but I like to do so. I'm going to note that individual was calling from branch, and then began feeding on insects shortly after. Notes like this can sometimes be helpful, especially when they're describing a feeding behavior or mating behavior. They're good things to add, but of course, you obviously don't need to do this. Now here comes the really cool part about iNaturalist, is that when you click in the species selection box, the AI algorithms will look at this image and try to identify them or compare them to other things that exist within iNaturalist. So in this case, it got it right. The first option is going to give you a genus that it's very confident the species is in, and then our species list. So we can see that it got the genus right here, but we know that this is a prothonotary warbler, and we can see by clicking the View tab that our images indeed are quite similar and that they match. So we're going to go back here and select prothonotary warbler. All right, we're getting very, very close to uploading our first observation. Now there are a couple other fields that you'll see on the left here. Most of the time you don't need to worry about them too much, but they can be useful for more advanced users who are looking to add specific tags to their project or to include it into pre-existing projects, which we'll touch on later in this video. You can also offset the time as well, so depending on your locality. At the top, we can remove the media, so whatever we have here, you can also click here to remove it. You can also add, so you can add photos and sounds or an observation without media, which will pop up sort of to the right here. Again, these are things that you won't often encounter. More often than not, you'll just upload a single observation like this. So we're going to go ahead and click the submit button to officially submit our first observation to iNaturalist. Okay, and it'll just load for a second here. So right now it's saving it, which will then appear into our observations page. All right. So we've successfully uploaded our very first observation to iNaturalist. If you followed along in this process, congratulations, you've now contributed to this amazing platform and can call yourself a citizen scientist. The observations tab is sort of the second most used part of iNaturalist beyond the upload tab itself. Now, this main component allows you to have a good control over where you're observing how many species you've recorded, where they are, as well as a lot of the metadata associated with it. So all your observations and species will be stored here, and you can go back in time and look at these lists at any point in time. This is quite useful when you want to review comments, change any metadata that may be incorrect or outdated, or simply just for the enjoyment of looking at all the species you've seen in a neat and organized list. And now there are a couple different ways that we can actually look at our observations here. Right now we're under the Edit Observations tab, which allows you to make changes to it. But I'm going to take you just to the standard observations page. So when we click here, we get a grid list of all the species we've seen. So in this instance, we've only uploaded one observation, so we only see one species. By default, this is set to the world, meaning all the species you've seen across the entire world will appear on this page without altering any of these bars, like the location or the species. You'll notice that there are two other tabs at the bottom here, the map and the list view. We'll click on the list view first, which shrinks the image down and pushes it to the left-hand side, and then expands the metadata to the right-hand side so you can more easily look at it. This is helpful when you want to sort of look at more information on one page, but I find myself more often than not using the grid view. You'll also see the map tab here. Now this shows you all the observations you've made across the world and where exactly they are. Sometimes you need to zoom in or out a little bit. Now, since we've only made one observation, we'll just see one point on the map. And if we continue to scroll out, the further we go out, the point will shrink and it'll eventually turn into this red dot. So when you have a bunch of observations together, they look like these clustered heat maps, sort of a bunch of red dots right beside each other, which you can then click on and it'll bring up the same information that you see to the right here. All right. The other important parts of the My Observations tab include the species list. So when we select here, it will show us all the species we've seen in our life that we've uploaded to iNaturalist with a stock image. So one of these images is taken on this platform. It's not necessarily your image. And below it will give you the common and scientific name along with the number of observations you've recorded for that particular species. This is something that I love using on a daily basis, as I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to creating lists like this, and it's nice to have all your species in one place. To the right, we have the Identifier tab, which allows us to see who's contributed to our observations, something that we obviously haven't seen yet because this is a new account. But in the future, when people contribute to this observation, they will pop up in this tab. The Observer tab, of course, just includes me because I'm the one who made this observation, and it will always stay at 1. Okay, I'm just going to click yes here because I am in Canada. Alrighty. Alright, so that concludes all the basic features I wanted to go over today, at least in this part of the video for the Observations tab. We will come back to this at a later point in the video and go over some of the more advanced features, although we've covered pretty much about 90% of the features that you'll find in the Your Observations tab. So the next, probably third most common tab you're going to use in your web browser iNaturalist is up here in the top left, the Explore tab. So like the Observations tab, the Explore tab displays data in this sort of similar grid, list, and map format. However, the main difference is that in the Explore tab, it is not just your own observations that appear, but all the recorded ones for that set area or taxonomic profile. Now you'll notice by default this is set to the entire world into all taxonomic groups. That's a lot of species. We could see that over 261 million observations have been included in iNaturalist with over 500,000 different species. So each one of these little red points represents a species from somewhere in the world. And if you zoom in, you can see the heat map type style of this map and get closer and closer. So there are a couple of features right off the bat that I would like to show about the Explorer function. And one of the most useful features is simply the ability to see what species reside within a given area. Now this feature is particularly useful. Let's say you want to find a specific animal, or you're going on a photography trip, you want to plan the areas that have the best spots for a given group of wildlife. This is something that I've done a lot of times personally. So to do that, you're going to enter your specific location on iNat, and it will take you to that given area and show you all the species that are in there. So let's just, for example, do Miami, Florida. You type that in, you select, and you hit go. Now what that does is puts a boundary map over that area and shows you all the species represented by these red points within that area. Now in the actual map tab here, we can control things such as whether it's a satellite, street map, or just basic. I tend to use a satellite most often because it just looks better in my opinion. It's better contrast. And then in the bottom left we have our legend. Now this is interesting because as you zoom in, you'll notice the color of each point changes from just these red squares to teardrop shape location markers with specific color. These colors are representative of the major taxonomic groups, and it's not something that's super useful when you're scrolling through, but it can be just a very rough way of seeing what's in an area. And of course you can look at the geoprivacy and edit the quality grade in this tab as well. But you'll see if I use the scroll wheel to zoom in, the colors change with, the green being plants, the blue being vertebrate animals, fungi is pink, and invertebrates are red. So let's say I'm interested in a very specific species that I maybe want to go check out. Maybe it's common in the area, but I don't know exactly where the hotspots for it are. So in this example, in Miami, Florida, we'll take a common species, the great egret. I can type this into the species bar and select, and that will then show me only the points that are great egrets. So again, we can zoom further back out and see where the hotspots are, and then zoom in to get sort of a more refined idea. So we can see that there's a lot seen down at the beach here, kind of more sporadically through different areas, but we notice that a lot of them, most of them in fact, are near water, and that makes sense because the great egret is a heron species and requires water to hunt. So let's go back for a second here. Let's exit out. We'll keep it as Miami, Florida, but we'll get rid of the great egret. Another thing that's very useful about the Explore tab is that you can look at all the species that have been seen within a given area. So we know that Miami, Florida, about 8,200 species have been recorded. If we go ahead and click on this tab, similar to what you do under the Your Observations tab, we get a list with the most common species in order from most common to least common. We can scroll and see that the brown anole in Miami, Florida is the most recorded species, which is very interesting. And this data can of course be used for many different purposes. We can also, like in our Your Observations tab, click on the identifiers. This will let you know who has contributed the most research grade identifications to the observations in Miami. So these aren't necessarily the same people who are taking the pictures, but they're helping to contribute to the citizen science by verifying what species are being seen. The Observers tab shows you the most common individuals who have taken pictures within Miami, Florida, or recordings and uploaded them. You can sort this by number of observations or number of species. Okay, so let's go back for a second here. There's a couple things I want to highlight specifically in the Species tab of the Explore function. You'll notice that a lot of these species, particularly in Florida, will have this little pink banner in the top right corner. This means that they were introduced into an area. And now is a good time to talk about the actual process iNaturalist goes through when including this information. So iNaturalist treats invasive or introduced species as if they were wild, because most of them are. So unlike, let's say, a garden plant that a human has planted and takes care of, or your pet dog that's entirely reliant on humans and is domesticated, these individual animals are actually living in the wild on their own. So although they're invasive, they're still technically considered wild or even feral, which, according to iNaturalist guidelines, makes them eligible for research grade observations. If you're ever confused about the specific guidelines, the iNaturalist page is quite comprehensive and goes into detail on what things you can and cannot count. A lot of things you can upload to iNat if you just want to use the AI search tool, but they will be kept at a casual or captive grade, meaning they'll never be research grade. Okay. So at this point, I want to say again, if you're going to use this feature to look for certain organisms in a given area, you want to be responsible and a good steward of the environment. So you don't want to be overly disruptive of sensitive species, or even just more common species. You want to have good ethical practices. Make sure when you're photographing, you're not getting too close. You're not forming crowds and scaring away species or disrupting their normal everyday behavior. Okay, so that brings us to some of the other features of the Explore tab. Now, one feature that many users will appreciate, and this can technically be considered a more advanced feature, is the ability to have granular control over what species you're seeing, where you're seeing them, the specific time frame, as well as a number of other add-ons and tags. So to access this, we can go to the filters bar at the far right of the screen here. Now, once we click on this filter tab, we get a lot more options. So we can go to the far left here and see that right now we are only seeing observations that are verifiable. Now, there are many different categories here. You have wild, captive, verifiable, research grade, etc. Verifiable means they're eligible for research grade, meaning that they're not a captive organism or a casual grade that doesn't have the appropriate metadata, and that they can eventually go to a needs ID level or to a research grade. You can also filter by broad taxonomic categories. You can filter by the exact date. So if you're looking for a very specific time, you can enter that here. You can also enter a range of months to the specific day. You can also select here to have one or many months of the year. So all of these are options that are available to you. Now, of course, there's the option to have more filters, sort of a more advanced version here at the bottom left. You can choose, be more selective with your photo licensing, particular users, whether it's part of a specific project, which is something that we will get into in a moment here, as well as be more refined with the actual search bar itself. So we're going to come back to this sort of at the end of the video to show one of the more advanced features that you can do with downloading the data. But for now, I want to talk about the basics of just being a contributor to the iNaturalist community. So one of the cool parts is anybody can contribute to improving the quality of observations. Now to do this, ideally you can do it through the map view by clicking on whatever or over here. But you can more often than not use the list or the grid view, which allows you to look at observations and see this little banner here in the bottom. So I'm going to try and scroll down a bit and see if any of these observations are research grade. Okay, we have one here. So let's just click on that for a second. So when we click on these observations, it'll take us to a very similar tab to the one we entered when we uploaded our first observation. Displays, some brief information about the location type, whether it's obscured or not, observation date with the picture. But then here at the bottom, you have this tab that allows you to either agree, compare, or suggest an alternative identification to the species being observed. Now, the purpose of this is to have multiple layers of verification to ensure the best quality data is being used on iNaturalist. A research grade observation is one where 2/3 of the IDs from the community match the same original species. So for example, if I disagreed and said it was another kind of species, that would change this balance and would bump down the taxonomic quality. So it would be verified, but only maybe to the genus level or to the family level as opposed to the specific species. To agree would be to contribute to the strength of this research grade observation and reaffirm that it is indeed a Florida butterfly orchid. And the neat feature too is you have the compare tab here, which allows you to look at similar pictures so you can see them side by side, which is quite helpful if you're not sure if the picture is a bit obscured. Now at the bottom here, there's also this tab for annotations. So um, with plants, you have the flowers and fruits. So you can go in here and select the appropriate option, whether it's flowering or it's producing fruit, um, whether it has leaves on, has green leaves, no live leaves, etc. If you know the sex, you can add that information. This just all improves the quality of the data, something that anyone from the community can do. There are lots of experts and curators on iNaturalist who go around every day improving the quality of observations, but the beauty is that any user who has a decent amount of knowledge for ID skills can go in here and contribute to these observations. They can also add it to their own project, which is, again, something we'll talk about later. Okay, so let's go back and go through a worked example we'll use this green iguana here, because why not? So we can see by clicking on this that this observation needs ID. So it has the location data, it has all the metadata it needs, but it's not research grade because no one else has verified it yet. And I'm pretty good with the majority of my common reptile IDs, and I feel confident that this is indeed a green iguana because I've seen many of them in my lifetime. And of course, in Florida, they are quite the common sight, despite the fact that they're introduced, or because they're introduced. So we're going to go down, and you can either hit agree and just automatically confirm that this is a green iguana, or you can leave a comment asking a question, or go into suggest identification, write a note why you think it's what it is. Especially, this is important to do if you disagree. So tell us why you disagree that this is a green iguana. But of course, in this scenario, I know it is. So I'll click in the tab here, which will use the AI generated photo software, which then gives me our top suggestion. And in this case, the only similar species in the area is a green iguana, which makes it nice and simple. We can hit select there and then done. And boom, we have now contributed and made this a research grade observation. So now we've improved the quality of it from a needs ID to a research grade. We can also go in here and for any of the annotations that we're sure of, we can go ahead and add those. So I know that it's alive. We can see that its eyes are open, it's active. This organism is alive. The evidence of presence. So this refers to what exactly you're looking at, because on iNaturalist you're allowed to upload, bones, nests, etc., egg fragments. But in this case, it's the whole organism, so we'll select that. Okay, so any of the ones you're sure of, go ahead and add those. If you're not sure, you can leave them empty. And then others can go in and either agree or disagree with those annotations, which of course just makes the process of filtering data a bit more accurate. Okay, so we're going to go back out here for a second. So sort of the two last features in this beginner exploration of the Explore tab have to do with the map itself. So creating a more refined map, you can hit the reduce search and map area. So everything that's displayed currently in the screen, it will search there, make a bigger box. You can also draw your own custom circular or rectangular boxes to get a more precise area. Because sometimes when you enter the location in the tab up here, sometimes it's not always exactly where you want it to be. For example, the Miami was it included some areas that maybe I didn't want to include. If I just want to do the downtown area or somewhere specific, then I can draw a smaller box, which will show us just observations within that area. So I think that's a pretty good overview of the basic features for the Exploration tab. And again, the whole point of this first half of the video is to show off just the fundamentals of iNaturalist, how everything works, give you a taste of how you can do this on your own. And then as we progress, we'll come back and show some of the more advanced things you can do and how you can actually take data from the app and use it for other programs like RStudio to do some more advanced research with. Alrighty, so I want to take just a minute here and kind of dive away from the Explore features just for a little bit so we can go over some of the more basic features of setting up a profile as well as some of the tools that you might find useful. So stepping away from the Explore tab here, we're going to take a very brief look at our profile. So if we take our mouse to the top right corner and select, this will automatically take us to our dashboard. So of course you can go ahead and click click here if you like, or you can just tap on your profile picture, which in my scenario hasn't been filled in yet. So you can of course add a profile picture if you like at a later date. Now what happens is when we click on this, when we click on our profile picture, it takes us to our dashboard view. Now this displays a bunch of different information here. So normally it'll just take you to the home page, which gives you all the updates on people you follow, your observations, your content, all that kind of stuff. So you can see that someone did contribute to our observation that we posted in the first half of this video, since I have spoken about it in just that amount of time. And now that update shows right in my dashboard. You can filter it by your content, so only things that are relevant to you. This is particularly useful if you're following a lot of people. And then, of course, if you click on following, it only shows you the people whose observations you're following. Now, some of the other features, we're just going to go sort of from left to right here. The profile. Now, this is something you can really play around with and customize. You can edit your settings, so make it so that you have a profile photo, to have a brief little bio about yourself, explaining maybe why you're on iNaturalist, your educational background, anything like that, cool observations. You can change your password. You can also go in and make edits to your account preferences, how you want notifications, the types of content you want, relationships to people maybe you've blocked or have excluded from some of your content. And this page just shows you some of the other applications where iNaturalist is available. So I just want to give you a brief overview of that. I won't go into too much details. That's something you can figure out on your own time, and it's fairly intuitive. Most of the features are self-explanatory. What I will, however, go and spend a bit more time on is moving away from profile. We've already covered observations. We'll very quickly touch on the Edit Observations tab. This is particularly useful if you have a lot of observations with missing or incomplete metadata, as we've previously discussed. So when we click on this tab, it gives us a couple of different options that we can see here. Now you can add more observations in a batch to sort of streamline the process, but the more useful feature is the batch edit. So let's say, for example, I had the wrong location or the wrong time and date. I can hit on the batch edit tab, select this observation, and in the case of having many observations, you just keep clicking down and click until you've selected all the ones that you want to edit. You are then going to click the Edit Selected button. Now this will take you to the Batch Observations tab. So there are a number of different things we can do here. We can go in and individually change any of the features of this observation, but the more useful part is the Batch Operations tab. So in here, we can look up a specific organism that we want to apply these features to. But what I find very useful is changing the date. So if we want to change the date to, let's say, the 9th of July, we hit apply. And now all the observations below will have that change made to them. We can do the exact same thing for our location data. So just like in our observation tab, we can select our specific area. So let's say actually it wasn't in Rondo, it was in Point Peely Park. We can select that. It'll update the lat long coordinates, and then we hit apply, and we can see that those have changed here. Now make sure if you're doing a batch edit for your observations that you click Save All once you're done. Otherwise, these changes won't be updated. So in our case, we're not going to hit Save All because the information is correct. So I'm going to hit Cancel, but in your case, you'd want to hit Save All. Okay, moving to the right, one more. Calendar. This isn't a super useful tab. I don't use it that often, but it's kind of neat to look back and see what days you've really observed a lot of species on. So we can see that for this profile, obviously it's a new profile, so there's not going to be much. But we can see our one observation here, May 18th. It will be appearing in blue, and if you hover your cursor over it, it will show you how many observations you've made on that day. It'll sort of form a darker gray circle around with the more observations you have. So if let's say you had 100 observations, it would be very dark gray. And this just is a way to see what days of the year you've had the most observations and maybe reminisce on some of your excursions out into the wild. Okay, so the ID tab is the next sort of thing I want to go over just briefly. this just displays all of the identifications you've made on other people's identification or other people's observations. So we remember how we contributed to this green iguana observation and updated it to research grade. All of those IDs you contribute to other people's observations will show up here, so you can go back and reference them at any point in time, or just have a list for yourself, because that's what iNaturalist is about, making lists. Which is a good time to talk about the list tab. So the list tab has several different functions. It's kind of basic right now because we haven't set anything up. It's a new account, but your lists will appear to the right here. So we'll briefly make let's say a favorite list in a second here. But before we do that, the dynamic life list will always show up on the left. When we click on this here, it will show us all the species we've observed and their taxonomic groups that they fall into, which is a very neat and helpful feature to sort of have more granular control over going back and looking at what you've observed. So in our case, we've only seen one animal, one chordate, one bird, one perching bird, which is, of course, a member of the New World warblers, being the prothonotary warbler. We click here, and it will, click one more time. We hit our observations, and it will show us the photo that we took. If we click on the species tab, it'll give you sort of the generic image that you would get back in your observations tab, going into the species, showing the number here. You can also filter by the location, just like you could in your observations tab. This is just another way of looking at it. Most of the functions are quite similar to your observations tab. However, it's very nice to have this taxonomic list on the left-hand side, where you can sort of filter up here as well what major groups you're looking at. You can also select tree view if you want. Another cool feature, and probably the last thing I'll talk about, since I don't want to go too overboard on this part, is the unobserved species. So if we click on birds here, hold on one moment, let me go back. So if we click on any of these taxonomic layers, it'll show us the unobserved species. So however many exist in the world, minus the ones we've seen. So we've had one observation within this taxon out of potentially 129 species, so 128 not observed. All right, so I won't go into too much more detail about this. This is something you can play around with. You can export the data from here as well, which is a neat feature, but not typically what you'd be interested in if you're doing more advanced research. Okay, so moving on from lists, we're going to go to the journal. Now, under the journal tab, you can create posts. So by clicking on new post, it will give you the option to attach observations. So let's say you went on a cool hike in a marshy area and you saw some really interesting species. You had a great time and you wanted to maybe make some notes about the field, what you saw, maybe some comments about the environment itself. You can, make a title, marsh, boardwalk, or whatever it may be, and then basically write whatever it is you want to talk about. So you can prevent people from adding comments to this. So otherwise, if you don't have this checked, the public can see it and can, add on to the bottom of it. But if you just want this for, your own enjoyment or to track sort of your major wildlife trips, you can disable this feature and either save as a draft or publish. Okay. So we're going to leave this for now. Quickly moving over, we have our favorites tab. So this shows us, it can be a little confusing because there's two different ways to favorite things. You can create a favorite list under the list tab. This tab, however, does not display that information. And I'll show you how to get things on your favorites page. So you hit the explore button, and let's say I really like this photo of the common yarrow. I scroll down on the observation and I hit the favorites button. And now if we go back to our dashboard, that will appear under our favorites. So it's a good way of bookmarking cool observations that you don't want to forget where they are. Okay. So a couple other things to mention. You'll get a brief overview of your dashboard up here. If we click on the sort of message icon, it will usually display a number of your new additions to your dashboard, which you can then click on and expand, again, the same way you would just by clicking on your profile. This little message icon, shows your inbox. So, of course, iNaturalist is a social platform in that sense, and people can direct message you about questions, regarding a specific observation, or asking your permission to include one of your photos in, let's say, a bigger project of theirs. So there's a lot of different ways you can use this. I'll show you in a minute how to follow someone, and then again I'll show you how to message them from that point. Okay, I know I said I'd be quick on this part, and there's just one more thing I would love to show you on your dashboard. So this is the subscription tool. You'll see sort of to the bottom right when you first enter this page. This allows you to subscribe to a specific taxa, meaning that you will get updates on that observation or observations that fall underneath this category in your update tab here. So let's say you're very interested in a specific species of bird. Let's see. Let's say I'm interested in the American avocet and what it's up to, any recent observations or taxonomy changes to it. I hit save, and then every time something happens to that species, I'll get notified by it in my dashboard here. You can do the same thing for a specific place too. So you can look at a taxon within a place. So if you want a notification that there's a specific species in your area or one of your study areas, you can select those two criteria and save it here, again showing it in your dashboard. Or you can just choose a place on its own, so maybe your hometown, to see interesting observations there and get updates regularly about them. Okay, so moving on from the dashboard, we're going to look at the main community functions. Now, we've already talked a little bit about journal posts. We will talk about projects in a moment. Just want to show you the people tab here and what it allows you to do. So let's say you have people that you know or are friends with, maybe your coworkers or co-collaborators on a certain project. You can search their username up in the top right hand corner here. That's fairly simple. You just enter their email address or their name. And we'll just do a quick example of how you'd add someone as a friend. So you just click on their profile, you hit follow, which will essentially add them to your dashboard and allow their observations to pop up and give you updates every day on what they're doing. But of course you can mute this feature while still following them, or of course unfollow them if you'd like. So since this is a new account, you're not able to message people until you have a certain amount of observations, which is for good reason to get rid of spam on iNat. But typically there'd be a little tab here to send them a direct message, or in your inbox, normally up right here there'll be a little mail icon you can click on, add their username, and then send a little message below. So it's pretty straightforward and something that most people should be able to figure out on their own. Okay, so that covers the majority of the things I want to talk about for the community tab, only leaving us to the forum. So one of the most powerful parts about iNaturalist is just the support that it has from its curators and the community. So this is an excellent place if you have any questions, comments, chats, whatever. You can go in here and search through the many different categories that exist. And yeah, have conversations about nature, talk about cool species observations. This is the place to do it. So you will access that again under your community tab at the very bottom. Okay, so we're going to move on to the more tab now. Now there's a lot of things that fall beneath this that I'm kind of going to maybe just skim over since they're not super interesting. Like for example, site stats. Most people aren't interested in this unless you're a developer. It just basically shows you background usage and things like that. Guides can be useful. However, most of them are incomplete. I've yet to see a good useful one. I still recommend downloading, either an online guide from the App Store or buying one from a local place. Like a book will always be better than some of these guys because it leaves out a lot of species here. So you can create your own guide if you're, really into this and want to make a guide for, a trip or something, or somewhere you've been and have a good knowledge about. Let's say you've studied a lot of the species in the area. But like for example, there's guides like saltwater fish of the world, and it will just provide you with a list of all the species, as well as a picture of them as well. But again, a lot of these lists are a bit clunky and unfinished, so It's not a feature I would particularly use. I think a standard Google search usually would return better information on the actual species in a given area, at least when compared to this guide. Ideally, you'd use the Explore tab to find what's in an area if you're interested in that. Um, yeah, just a note. We also have Taxa info, another thing that I don't use too much, but it allows you to search for specific species. An example here is the eastern towhee. It gives you a little synopsis about them, and it allows you to sort of expand and dive into sort of the natural history of each major taxonomic group. So we're in the kingdom Animalia. Gives us a snapshot of some of the photos, who leads the leaderboard and total observations and identifications. And then, yeah, it just links you to the Wikipedia page. So, kind of useful, but something you could also do elsewhere outside of iNaturalist. So, something, again, that I don't. Okay, so the Help tab. This is where you go to ask any specific questions about the platform itself. This is a great place for frequently asked questions. And if you just scroll down a little bit further, again, you have this tab as well as how-to tutorials, kind of like the one I'm making right now, except they're broken up into more bite-sized bits. You have getting started to do, such as the educator's guide and how to make observations on the mobile app. So in a minute, we'll talk about the projects, which is something that we're going to go over as more of an advanced feature for maybe you're a professor or you teach an environmental outdoors class and you want to use iNaturalist to create a project. We'll go over that in a minute. So again, help and getting started. If you just scroll down, they'll take you to the same page. The educator's guide. I highly, highly recommend you thoroughly read this if you are someone in academia who is planning on using iNaturalist as a platform to do some sort of project with your class. This page has a wealth of information on not only the logistics of doing it and the software, but the reasons behind why you'd want to make a project, how to make sure the quality of your data is good, how to get people involved and excited about a project, and the do's and don'ts, which there are a lot of. So I won't dive too deep into this because, of course, it's all written out in plain English here. But yeah, you just want to make sure that you're doing it for the right reasons, not uploading crappy observations that will flood the system and the community. And if you're planning on using it, read this whole page. You won't regret it. Okay. So, and again, video tutorials. This just takes you back under the knowledge base. So, how to do specific things like geotagging camera photos, duplicating observations, frequently asked questions. Although there's obviously a lot more things that could be on here. It's not a comprehensive list. So, part of the reason I'm making this video. Okay. And then curator guide. I won't go over this at all because if you're at the level where you're thinking of becoming a curator, then everything I've described up to this point is something you should already know. So no point in explaining it. Last, we have the donate. So of course, iNaturalist is a platform that aims to help the conservation of many species. It's an amazing piece of software that has helped scientists across the world and contributed to real-world conservation efforts. So if you feel like donating or becoming a monthly donor, this is the page to do it on. All right. If you've made it this far into the video, I want to congratulate you and thank you for sticking around for so long. Right now, we're going to move away from sort of the more intermediate or basic features of iNaturalist and really get into the meat and potatoes of using this platform to do your own projects. Now, this is going to be very useful either for educators such as professors or outdoor guides who maybe want to do a BioBlitz style competition using projects, or if you're a student who's been required by one of your teachers or professors to do the same thing. So in this next section, I will both show you how to join a project as well as how to make one of your own. Okay, so getting started with projects. Now, there are many different ways you can actually access the projects tab. You can click under your dashboard to view all the ones that you are currently signed up for. So a while ago I signed up for the Songbird as pollinators, so this will appear here. You can start your own at the bottom here. But what I recommend for the first time is to go underneath the community tab and click on projects. Now this will show you all of the projects that currently exist across the entire world. So it will show you essentially everything in one place. But I would recommend, even though you're not necessarily going to start a project right now, to click on this tab just because it gives you a good in-depth overview of what projects are. So as we see at the top here, projects are designed to automatically include all the observations that fit the predetermined criteria. And there are two different types, the collection and umbrella projects. Now if we scroll down, the collection projects will be the most common as they just allow for a nice robust way to gather information about a certain time and place with certain users and have statistics comparing people. So we'll click on a sample of this and it will take us, I believe, to the Global Amphibian BioBlitz. So this project includes all the observations in the world of amphibians. So this is a project that you don't actually have to join. It is basically taking data from the public and filtering it into one neat place where you can get all the pictures, look at the individuals with the most observations, the individuals with the most species, and the most common species observed. So it's doing this all just by collecting publicly available data from iNaturalist. If you go down, you can see more statistics in the actual group journal. You of course can have the option to join this project if you want to see updates in your dashboard, but it's not a requirement for your data to be uploaded here. So if I were to, let's say, upload an observation of a toad or a frog or some kind of amphibian, that would appear under the project field automatically. So let's just pretend that this prothonotary warbler is a toad. If we scroll down to the projects tab, the Global Amphibian BioBlitz would automatically appear here. So for those types of publicly available collection projects, those fields will automatically be added. But if it's a project that you have to sign up for, you'll have to manually do this. Okay, so let's just go back for a second. We'll go back and we'll just briefly touch on umbrella projects. So umbrella projects function very similar to collection, except that they are comparing pre-existing collection projects to each other. And the example that they give here is the City Nature Challenge. So this umbrella project compares the collection projects from across the world. So each one of these represents a nature challenge from a different city and is comparing the total number of observations from each city to one another. And this is a fun way to incentivize BioBlitz style events. You can also filter it by the species or the number of observers. So umbrella projects might not be as useful if you are, just doing something for your own class. Most of the time, a collection project will be sufficient for 90% of your needs. But if you're interested in collecting data on a larger scale and having a neat way of comparing multiple different projects, then creating an umbrella project is the way to go. All right. So let's go ahead and just do a very brief demo of how to start a project of your own. Alright, so now I'm going to go through the steps showing you how to make a basic collection project. Now these are great for BioBlitz events or, doing a simple collection event for a course or a club or whatever it may be. Now setting it up is actually a lot simpler than most people think. All you need to do is navigate to the projects page like we've done previously and scroll down to the collections project. Then you're going to click the big green tab titled Get Started. And then you'll have some fields that will pop up for you. So first and most importantly, you want to choose an appropriate name. This could be maybe a course code, the name of your club or group or whatever it may be, but something that's going to delineate it from the rest of the projects out there. So you don't want it to be too generic, i.e. having just the name of the species or group of species first. Make sure you have an identifier for what it actually is going to be entailing. So for my project, let's just do a simple little project. We're going to do Warblers of Rondo. Okay, so what you can do is you can add an icon, a PNG, or a GIF. So you can customize the way it looks. The image could be, a logo of something, your school, your program, whatever it may be. So here we're going to go and type in just a little brief summary of this project. Today we are aiming to collect observations of New World warblers from within the park boundaries. Rondo. Okay, we'll just keep it simple right now. And again, you can come back and change the project icon and banner at a later point in time. And for project type, we're going to keep it at the default collection because that's what we're interested in today. And now here comes the fun part where you get to choose what criteria you want for the observations. So first and foremost is in Rondo Park. So we're going to go ahead and select that first. Rondo Provincial Park. And this pops up. So that means all the observations have to be within this park. Now you can include users, so if you know specifically who's going to be in the project, you can go ahead and directly add them here, although I wouldn't recommend doing it that way. But first let's fill out the species criteria. So we're going to put New World Warblers. Family Parulidae. Awesome. So if it's in Rondo Park and it has New World Warblers, so far it will automatically show up here. Of course, you can add exclusion filters as well. So if you're trying to avoid, let's say, an invasive species, you're looking at a given area of plants maybe, and you want to exclude invasives, you can go ahead and add those taxa in there. You can exclude certain areas from within the larger place or exclude certain users from there. Do that at your discretion and as you see appropriate for the project of your choosing. Okay, now here is where you go to the project members only tab. So this is quite useful if you're doing a classroom project, because if you don't click this, all the observations that meet your criteria will appear, and that can flood your system with unnecessary data that you aren't interested in. So if I'm just doing a classroom project, the best way to do this is to select this box and make all of your students go in and actually join the project. That way only their observations that meet the above criteria will be included. This way it just keeps it a bit tidier and it makes it easier to keep track of stats. Okay. And of course, in this project, let's say we're only interested in the organism itself. We don't care about feathers, we don't care about bones, we don't care about nests. I just want to see the actual organism itself. So we can go ahead and select. We can do a bunch of different things. We can do alive or dead. We can do established, life stage, evidence of presence. So where, like we said, we only want the organism, so we're going to select evidence of presence, and then we're going to select organism. So now it must contain that annotation, otherwise it will not be included. And it's important to make sure that you let the members who are about to join your group know this, otherwise they may have a bunch of observations that don't get uploaded. Okay. Now here's where you control the data quality type, so research grade and needs ID. Excuse me. So I would recommend leaving these two checked, not casual, because usually with casual there's missing metadata. And if that's the case, they should go and fix that before it gets added to the project. Okay, media type. I'd recommend, depending on what type of project you want, to leave it at any. But let's say if we're just interested in the organism, depending on what it is, you might just want to have a photo, right? Like, you can't really record a sound for a plant, so it makes no sense to have this on. If you want to be more specific, you can require it to have both photos and sound within the same observation. But leaving it on any is just the best default to have. All right, now here's another way of excluding certain species. If we only want native species to show up in this project, we must select that. It is not there by default. By default, anything that meets the taxonomic criteria will show up, even if they were introduced to the area by anthropogenic means. So we can toggle that to native, because in our case, it's what we're interested in. However, to my knowledge, there are no invasive New World warblers in Rondo Provincial Park, so there isn't a need for this project. It's just there if you need it for your specific use. Okay, now here we've reached the date observed. So we can have an exact date. So let's say you're doing a single day BioBlitz. You only want observations from a very specific date. You can go in here and select, let's say, July 16th. You can also select a range of days. So let's say you have a month till the end of the semester and you want the projects to be done by then. You can, of course, set your start date and then your end date. Same type of thing. And again, you can also do this with the months. So certain months of the year you want observations to be included or not. But right now we're just going to select any. And here's a nice little tab that allows you to preview these observations and what will show up with these requirements. So if you've had this checked, nothing will show up right away unless they've already started the project. Ideally, you'll set up the project before you've explained the assignment to them. So in that case, I don't think anything would show up because no one could have joined the project. So we're going to unclick it just for the demonstration purpose. Okay, so we'll just do a quick little preview. All right, and we can see that it worked. We can see we have 16 species of New World warbler, 46 observations, all within Rondo Provincial Park. Now, of course, the area may be a little bit too small. Oh, that's not too bad. Sometimes you may have to go in and refine the search area. It might not always get it right in the projects tab, and I'll show you how to do it in a second here, but right now that seems to be pretty good. Okay. Alrighty. So now we're going to go back to the project. Okay, and lastly, we get to the member section at the bottom. So like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, typically you want to obscure locations for endangered or rare species. If you're going to have that criteria set up for your BioBlitz event or whatever you intend this project to be for, you can have the option to allow members to trust this project with hidden coordinates. So this gives them the ability to share that information with you while not giving it directly to the public. And that's up to you to decide whether or not you want to do that. I suggest that you read this quickly and make sure that it's appropriate for your type of project. And of course, if you have more than one person who's administrating this, so let's say you have TAs or graduate assistants who might be helping you run a BioBlitz, partners, coworkers, whoever, you can add their username here, and they will be able to make changes to the project page itself. But we're not going to do that this time. And as we've reached the bottom, I'm going to hit done. Okay. So now our project's saving. It's saving. This may take a moment here. All right. And there we go. Warblers of Rondo, our first project showed up here. Okay, so now we can see an overview of recent observations. We can see where the most observations come from, which users, who has the most species, and the most commonly observed species, which may or may not actually be relevant to the order they appear in nature. But of course, that's one of the things with iNaturalist. Sometimes there is bias. People like to post rare species more often than they like to post more common species. So you can sometimes get this reverse skew where typically less common species appear at the top of lists because a lot of people seek them out. Okay, see 46 total observations as well as a lot of the requirements here and a map of all of the points. If you want to make any changes to this or look at members, you can click here, view your membership, or edit project tab, which just takes you back to the same page we were on. Okay, to then view your project and your status, which will typically be contained here in your projects. So if you go under the community tab, you can always get back and access this again. Yeah, so that's how to make a basic collection project. Again, fairly intuitive, nothing super complicated, but it's nice to just go through a walkthrough first, understand some of the requirements, make sure you go to the educator's guide if you're thinking of creating a project for a class or a course. It has a lot of great tidbits and ways of motivating people to join and create good scientific research grade observations. Okay. All right, now that we've covered collection projects, I think it would be good to just briefly show you the umbrella project tab, which is 99% the same. It might have less fields, but I think it's worth going over just for a couple seconds. Let's go into our projects here, and we will start another project. Go to umbrella, and like the collection project, hit get started. Everything's going to be the same at the start, as is adding an icon or a banner, same with the summary. However, under umbrella, all you do is enter the name of multiple different collection projects that already exist. So all you do is type it in. We'll use the one we just created. Rondo. Whoops. And there. So we can keep adding as many as we'd like. And then these will show up and we'll be able to track them. So take a look here. And there we go. We have a collection of observations from both of them. Let's see here. All right. So of course I'm not going to do this for this video, but if you were wanting to make an umbrella project, you go through the exact same process as you would with a collection project, except the only difference is under the observation field, you just add the names of the projects you want to include. Okay. Simple as that. Now, we're done with the majority of projects. There's a lot of cool things you can dive into once you've created them, but that's something that each individual will need to customize to their specific needs, something that I can't necessarily flesh out in full detail. Once you have it created, you've got to tinker around, play with the educator guide, and really fine-tune and figure out what's going to make your project effective and efficient. All right, so while we've concluded the majority of things you can do for setting up a project, I think it would be prudent to go and show some of the more advanced features I promised to talk about earlier in the Explore tab. So when I say project, these types of projects will be within the iNaturalist app, and that's great. You can get a lot of useful insights and data from them, which you can then have the option to export. But I want to show you how to actually export that data so you can use third-party software like, let's say, Excel, MATLAB, or RStudio to do some more comprehensive, maybe mapping or projection of, or plotting, I should say, of geographic data points. So to do that, you're just going to simply go to the Explore tab and enter the fields that you'd like. So we've used Miami before. We might as well use it again. Nice little area. So we'll do Miami, Florida. And in this case, let's say I'm interested in all the heron species of Miami, Florida. That will give us 12,975 observations with a total of 12 different species. To get this data out of iNaturalist there's two steps to it mainly. First of all, you're going to go to the Filters tab, and then you're going to hit the download at the far bottom right. Once we've reached the download page, we can then go in actually be more specific with our query. So really fine tune which data we're interested in. So I'm not going to go and change everything in here because it's not absolutely necessary, but I recommend going in and checking to see whether or not you want photos, what quality you want. So I want research grade, reviewed any, captive cultive any, because I don't think there are any invasives. Just going to go quickly down. You can add specific taxons or not within that taxon. Days of the year, months of the year, or years themselves, specific coordinates, users, projects, IDs, date ranges, all of these things you can fine-tune to make the cleaning process of the data much easier. That way you spend less time in other programs like Excel trying to trim and clean your data. Now in the second tab here, we get a preview, so it'll show us kind of what this query above has generated. And we can see that, yeah, it's showing us some of the results we like, very similar to what we saw in the Explore tab, which is always a good sign. What we can do is then go down to Choose Columns, which is option number 3. Now, under this tab, we have all the basic data that we'd like to include, the descriptive data. So by default, I hit None to unselect all of them, and then only add the ones I'm interested in. So I'm interested in when it was observed, the date of the observation, time of day it was observed at, the quality grade, and let's see, description. Those are what I'm interested in. For GeoNotes, so the actual location, in this situation, I really only care about the latitude, longitude, and the accuracy. I'm not really interested in everything else. And if we go back down to taxon, I really only want to see the scientific name and the common name. All of this taxonomic extra is things that you can, really dive deep into, but for our purpose, we're not going to do so. Okay, so when we reach step number 4, we hit Create Export, which will then take you to this page. Usually it's pretty quick in loading, but if not, you can select this tab and it will send an email once the query has loaded to the email you have on file for iNaturalist, which you can then go and access later. And this will be usually a CSV file, which you can open in any sort of Office program like Excel, any cell-based program. to go in and further clean your data. You can then use this to potentially incorporate into one of your thesis projects or whatever it is you're doing, whatever kind of research you're doing. You can export this data and then use it in, let's say, RStudio or MATLAB to do some more advanced statistical analysis with. So it's just taking a minute here, just because we had a substantial number of observations. So it has to go through each one of those roughly 12,000 different observations and collect that data and turn it into a CSV file. So what we can do is just pause the video for a second and then I'll come back once it's loaded. All right, so we fast forward a minute here and we've successfully downloaded our query. So we can see right here, 317 kilobytes. So we're going to download this one. And it will download as a CSV zip file. And I'll go through the actual process of opening just for curiosity's sake. So when we click on this CSV file, it'll take us to what my default program is I have set up, which in this case is Microsoft Excel. And there we go. It'll have all of the information that you want, including the lat and longitude, positional accuracy, the species name, and the common name. So right, just like that, easy peasy lemon squeezy. And you can go ahead and use this data for anything you like. You can export it, you can clean it up a bit more here, and then start performing some really neat statistical analysis in more advanced statistical programs like RStudio and MATLAB. All right, so I've cut out that last second here, going back to the actual iNaturalist tab. Now we're nearing the end of this video. We're getting very, very close, and I think I've covered most of the things, about 80% of the stuff that most people would find useful, especially first-time users or people who have a high degree of knowledge about ecology from another perspective, but just maybe haven't used the web browser version of this platform. And again, at any point, feel free to leave a comment on this video. Feel free to, let me know if there's something else you'd like me to go over in more detail, or I could potentially even explain it in the comments. So we're going to go over two things at the end here. We're going to go over the Identify tab, which is really the last thing that I haven't talked about. And then we're also going to go over a couple of really nerdy features about iNat that aren't necessarily direct features of the software, but some plugins that I know some people would be very interested in, like seeing which of your species you've observed is the least common in the world. That's something that I find really interesting and something that iNaturalist, at least not that I know of, is able to do right now. So a couple of these plugins will allow you to see your data from that perspective, which is super neat. So we'll do those at the very end. Okay, so right now we're going to take a look at the last tab that I want to cover, the Identify tab. Now, if you're an expert or maybe you just love IDing other people's photos, maybe tricky to ID ones, and you're really good within specific taxonomic groups or regions, feel free to use this tab. You can also ID, like I mentioned before, under the Explore function. You can do the same thing, but this just streamlines the process. So you can enter a place. So let's do Ontario just for our example. Oops. Ontario. And I want, let's do birds. Something I'm good at. Okay. All right, so this will show us all the birds in Ontario who aren't quite yet at the research grade level. They're ones that still need a verification. And it allows you to go through and very quickly assess whether or not they belong there or what species they are. So you can go, and if you've seen it but you're still not sure, you can hit marked as reviewed, which says that someone's reviewed it but weren't able or confident to make an ID, which still helps in the process of improving the data quality because maybe someone else could. But in this case, I know it's an Eastern Kingbird, so I will agree. Works pretty much the same way as the ID function within the Explore tab. Let's say I want to click on one of these. Again, it takes you back exactly the same way it would. So really the only difference about the Identify tab is the way the data is displayed to you. Having all the ones that need identifications displayed out in this neat way helps curators and experts who have a lot of knowledge for the specific taxon to go through and quickly help improve the research grade quality of other people's observations. So we do another one, agree here. And then it says reviewed. So yeah, that's about it. You could change the view slightly up here, and you can hit mark all as reviewed, saying that you've looked at them all, but you're not sure or confident enough to agree or disagree with them. And of course, same filters as in the Explore tab. All right, that's pretty much all I want to cover. I won't go into too much more detail about the Identify tab, as I don't think it's the most useful part of iNaturalist. And now I feel confident that we are approaching the end of this video. And thank you, those of you who stuck around from the very beginning. I've been very happy to have you with me here, and those of you who may be just joining or have skipped ahead, we're nearing the end here. If there's anything else that's of interest, of course, like I mentioned before, leave a comment on the video below. Okay, so now we're going to get into the really nerdy stuff here, something that I wanted to show at the end of this video. Now, there's a couple ways to view your data that aren't directly within this software itself. You might need to tweak a couple things, and I'm going to go ahead and show you those right now. So one of the cool plugins I found is this URL, which allows you to create a heat map of your existing observations. But all it requires you to do is input your user ID at the end of this URL, and then copy and paste it into your web browser at the top. So to access and to find your user ID, all you need to do is go to your dashboard, and you're going to click on your profile here. Now you'll see up in the very top corner, there's a number displayed behind your username. So let me just refresh for one more moment here. So in this case, hold on, we're going to go down. There we go. So sometimes you'll have to go into your actual profile that way, and it won't always work from the dashboard, but you want this number right here. This is your user number. It tells you, out of all the people on iNaturalist, what number are you in the order that you signed up in. So we're going to copy or cut this. We're going to paste it at the end of this URL. So of course I'm going to put these URLs in the description below this video. So if you want to check them out, I'll leave the blank version, and you can go ahead and input your own number at the end. All right, so we input our number here. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to copy this whole URL, go up here, and we're going to paste it and hit enter. And voila, we've taken ourselves to a heat map. Now of course, because I only had one observation, you'll just see this tiny little heat cluster at the bottom there that will get more colorful as we zoom in. The more observations you have, the bigger the heat map will be. And if you have them across different places of the world, the blobs will get even bigger and more visible from the further you zoom out. So this is a really neat feature for people who are nerds like me and just want to get another way to visualize your observations. Not something that's absolutely critical, but just something I found to be quite cool. Now the other link that I wanted to show is sort of this plugin. It takes you to another website. It was actually created by a user, Elias Schernig. So shout out to him. He did a great job with this, as this URL allows you to basically see which of the species you've observed are the least common in the world. So this is neat if you're just interested or curious. You've seen a rare species and you're not sure how many other ones have been seen. It gives you an ordered list. So I'm going to paste and go. This will just take you to the default page, and then you must put in your specific user ID at the top here. You have the option to compare it to other people and filter. So let me go back and get my username, John Smith. We're going to copy this, go in, and paste as plain text. Hit update, and this will give us a list of all of our species. Okay, and it gives you the scientific name first. So in the background, between cuts, I added 2 other observations to my account. And by default, it shows you the scientific names. So the least common species I've observed is Vireo flavifrons, which, if I'm correct, is the yellow-throated vireo, which you can verify by clicking on. And indeed it was. So let's go back. So I have one observation of this species, And currently on iNaturalist, there's over 7,000 observations. The Prothonotary warbler, 14,000 observations, and the scarlet tanager, 24,000. So this is just a really neat tool if you're interested. Maybe you saw something rare and you just want to have a comparison with some other users or the platform as a whole. Because lots of times, especially with insects and less common species, you may be the only person on iNaturalist to have recorded that. So I find this plugin to be very useful at displaying this kind of data. And again, I will put it in the description below. All right, well, I hate to say it, but I think that's going to wrap up this video for today. Thanks again to everyone who stuck with me, who came from start to finish. I appreciate your viewing, and I hope that you found this tutorial to be helpful at some or all points. Now, if there's any other questions or you want to see more tutorials in the future about this or other topics, feel free to let me know in the comments below. Thanks again, and have fun being a citizen scientist. Enjoy iNaturalist, and have a great time.